Welcome into episode 485 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. At long last, the Bruins season is upon us. They're playing the Washington Capitals in their season opener. So, Bridget and Scott, that means that we are going to hit you with our season predictions for the Bruins and league-wide.
Yeah, opening night in the NHL is happening while we're recording. And, guys, I got to say, I was reminded just how stupid it is to have opening night start at 5 p.m. And for it to be Florida versus Chicago, I get why they are still trying to make the Blackhawks happen, but one of the worst teams in the league. Just like it felt like tuning into. I mean, I missed the start of the game first off because, like a normal person, I'm not home right at 5 p.m. But it like when I got home and tuned in before we started recording, it's like this feels like a warm-up game. Like this feels like an appetizer. This doesn't feel like an opening night main event.
Yeah, it was it was a glorified preseason type game when you talk about the teams that are playing. And I didn't know that they were on at 5 either. I saw on Twitter people saying, "Oh, it's nice to have hockey back." I'm like, "Oh, it's 5:15. What are we talking about?"
Yeah.
It's just so stupid, But
yeah, it's to me. I mean, some of those preseason games were worth watching probably over this one. Like the crazy one we were talking about last episode with Florida and Tampa Bay and all the penalties, just for novelty, I guess, that you don't really see that. But yeah, 5 o'clock, it caught me off guard, and obviously we pay attention, and then all of a sudden, like, yeah, I was having a busy day, and then I looked down, I'm like, it's 6 o'clock. Oh my god, I already missed an hour. So yeah.
Yeah, for first official fight of the season, the two former Bruins line mates, Nick Foligno and AJ Greer.
Yep.
Greer also scored for the Panthers.
He's just becoming a hell of a fourth liner over there, huh? He was actually surprised, not to jump back a couple of years, but I was a little surprised at the time that he was never inserted into the Bruins lineup back in the 23 playoffs or down the stretch when they just kind of loaded up at the deadline and whatnot, because I thought he provided some spark and energy to that team. And even him getting waived a couple years ago, I was surprised by that. But he's carved himself out a good career post Boston in particular.
Yeah, it was unfortunate for him because it was like really unfortunate for the Bruins too, because they brought back Milan Lucic, and that kind of at the time seemed to make Greer expendable. They were obviously hoping he'd get through waivers. He didn't. And then, Lucic gets hurt, and then everything else happens there. He ends up getting arrested, and obviously just really was not a part of the team that season. And they could have used Greer, like, in retrospect.
If I remember correctly, you had a sit down with him for the Skate Pod. I want to say, heading into that 22-23 season, and it was a very candid interview and a very easy play to root for, given his journey. And then since being in Florida, he's kind of started to really embrace that culture there and be a little bit more edgy. He was edgy in Boston too, but yeah, I know, but it's gone to another level in Florida.
I think he's also learned how to fight better. Like, he was always willing to fight, but in Boston, he had some fights where, like, he was just swinging wildly, and then he'd get hit with a hard punch, and you'd be like, he's a little out of control. But, like, the fight he had tonight with Foligno, it's like Foligno's obviously an experienced fighter, and Greer was right in there and probably landed the better blows.
All right, so that's enough on AJ Greer. We'll talk about him, I'm sure, when the Bruins play throughout the year.
I had another half hour on Greer and Foligno. So.
Yeah, because he's a former Terrier, of course. That's probably why.
That's true. Yeah.
But anyway, so before we go into the preseason predictions and whatnot, Scott, you mentioned before we started recording that Zdeno Chara spoke today, and some of his former teammates on his jersey, his banner raising ceremony later this year. Just any thoughts on that?
No, I think it was a lot of what we would have expected. He talked about his journey and signing with Boston and his time here. I unfortunately I was not able to get over there. I'm in the middle of a shower replacement project that might be done right before, like, opening night. So, and ended up timing out okay, but I was not able to get to the Garden today for Chara's press conference. But
you get the little sticky ducks.
What was that?
The sticky ducks. Are you putting the sticky ducks?
Yeah. Well, that's step 2. Yeah.
By the way, Bridget, I don't know about you, but I've been blinded this whole time because Scott's teeth have just been shining through my camera. For those who don't know, he came from the dentist today. So now he's looking nice and squeaky clean on camera.
Perfect teeth. I'm gonna knock on wood. Never had a cavity.
Come
Me
on.
neither. Me neither.
Wow.
Never had
2 out of
braces. Never
3.
had anything.
Oh, I had braces, but
All right. Let's move on. So, what you guys want to start right off the hop with where we think the Brewers are going to finish? That's probably a good natural place to start, and then we can break down some individuals and some prompts, and then we can go into some league stuff. But let's just get right into where we think the Bruins might finish this year. I know it's kind of maybe we should wait until the end, but fuck it, let's get right into it. So, who wants to go first?
Bridget, go.
Because you know how much I love predictions.
Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
thanks for throwing it to me right away. Okay, I thought about this one a lot, but still couldn't come up with like a great answer. But I said sixth
In the division.
Sixth in the division. So that's what we're talking about, the Atlantic. So I really think 6 is kind of a no man's land. And if they end up 6th, that's not good because you're not in the playoffs and you're not getting a high draft pick probably. Like you're in like this middling spot that you don't want to be. So Bruins fans should be rooting for them to be top 4 or 8th. And that kind of 5, 6, 7 is really not a good place to be. But like when I look at their roster on paper and I go through the list of the other teams, I think they're the 6th best team in the conference, because I won't go through my whole list yet because we have that at the end.
In the division, right? Not the conference.
Oh, sorry, in the division. Yes, in the conference they're much further down than that. No, in the division, I have 5 teams ahead of them, and I think that's what they are on paper today. If they are in that position at the trade deadline, which is, a reasonable expectation, I hope they just sell and bottom out to 8th, which is where they ended up last year. So, unfortunately, though, I kind of feel like they'll be in that maybe that weird gray area spot. Or we can get more into it later when we talk about the full standings of the Atlantic.
Yeah, I have them 7th in the division. And kind of similar thinking where like I see them making a playoff push? Yes, I could if enough breaks right. And we can get into some of those things, but I'm not going to predict that. I think it's too much that has to go right. And sort of on the flip side, I also don't see enough going wrong that they're like the absolute worst team in the league. So yeah, I have them 7th in the division. The only team I have behind them, and Bridget, I don't know who you had behind them, but I have Detroit last. I
had Detroit and Buffalo behind them.
Yeah, I'm really unimpressed with Detroit, and I could see them. They weren't very good last year, but obviously they were better than the Bruins. I can see them taking a real step back. I don't think the Yzer plan is going well there. So that's the only one I had below them. I have them, just to expand it quickly, like I have them 4th worst in the conference. I also have the Penguins and Flyers worse out of the Metro. And I have them like, I think 8th or 9th worst in the league. So like bottom 10 in the league, but not 5th worst like they were last year. Did we have point projections as a separate thing, or
yeah,
I can just give that now. But I mean, like the over under in like a lot of sports books and stuff is 79.5 or 80.5 points. And that's kind of right around where I have them. Like I keep ending up in like 80, 81, 82. Which, as Bridget said, is kind of like no man's land, and that's, I'm with you. Like, that's a really fascinating spot because it's like, is that bad enough to sell at the deadline? I think it probably is. Like, I think if you're trending in that direction, you do probably sell off at least a couple pieces. Maybe it's not a full-blown fire sale like last year.
Yeah. Should I just give my points too? I had them at 84 points because I do think I picked them slightly higher than Scott. So
I got him second.
What?
Yep.
Second to last in the league, or
No, I'm just kidding. I got him 7th as well. I have him 7th in the division. I also have Detroit 8th. I also have the Bruins finishing with 82 points. I think the Bruins forward group, I think they're going to work hard, but on paper, they're 8th in the division. On paper, I think their talent is 8th. But on the back end, I don't think that they have the 8th worst back end. I think Detroit does. And I also like the Bruins back end better than, potentially better than, at least defensively, potentially better than Buffalo and maybe somebody else as well. But ultimately, yeah, I have the Bruins finishing 7th in the division. I think their range could be as high as 5th. I think it could be as low as 8th. And, one thing I'll add, Bridget, to your comment about if they finish 5th. I mean, Montreal finished 5th last year, and they were the second wild card. So, I mean, it's possible that if the Atlantic has 5 playoff teams, that 5th place is that last wild card spot, which I think we all kind of have agreed is their ceiling, which is maybe the last wild card in the conference. But yeah, I think their range is 5th to 8th in the division. And part of me thinks that it is interesting because when you have a team that everybody's unanimously saying is going to suck, sometimes they surprise. But what I'll say is this: after the better part of 15 to 20 years having high expectations in Boston when it comes to the Bruins, when you have high expectations, most of the time it ends in disappointment. It's, to have a year with no expectations, you either end up drafting really high or maybe they surprise people and it's a fun season to follow. So, but I have him 7th.
But if it's 6th or 7th, that's going to be probably not acceptable to Bruins.
I would say
that is the one answer that is not acceptable.
I would say 6th and 7th.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, Bridget,
6th and 7th can still be like top 10 though. It could be like near 10th overall in the draft.
Yeah, and I guess what I would say is, what if that's where they're trending, where you get to March, you're closing in on the trade deadline, and they're, instead of a point or two out of the playoffs, they're 7-8 points out, and it's clear like they're not making a real run, and then they sell off, say, Victor Arvidsson, Andrew Peak, and like maybe one other piece, bring in a couple draft picks, and then still have enough left that they don't completely bottom out like last year, and they finish with the 8th or 9th worst record that way. Like, I don't know that that's worst case. Like, that's not a disaster to me. Like, what would be a disaster is like you're 1 or 2 points out of a playoff spot and you trick yourself into thinking you can do something and you don't sell at the deadline, and then you finish like 5 or 6 points out of the playoffs and you just did nothing. Like, you kept everyone, you didn't get any picks out of it, and you still missed the playoffs.
I really don't think they'll do that though.
I don't either, but like it is really hard to sell if you're like a point or two out of the playoffs on deadline day.
Yeah.
Well, there's also some scenarios that can happen that is somewhere in between, right? Like we talked about in the past. I mean, there are some pending, UFAs next summer, and if teams don't want to lose them for nothing, maybe the Bruins are eyeing a more long-term potential trade or something. But yeah, at the end of the day, I envision Boston entering next season with some sort of external top 6 forward addition that we don't have in the organization right now. I also think you have James Higgins, and I also think maybe, depending on how high they draft in 2026, you could have a first-year player in that draft class 2 entering. So we'll see. But as far as this year goes, I just see it, like I said, ceiling is 5th in the division, in my opinion, but they could finish as low as 8th, especially if there's injuries or, like you guys mentioned at the deadline, they just decide to do something we saw last year. So that's the first question we can probably chalk off. We answered the points.
Yeah. Did you guys want to do, I know we had it like a little bit later, but just since we're talking about it, like do our division rankings, how we see the Atlantic division unfolding?
Sure. Yeah. Do you want me to just give you rattle off who I have?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So I have Detroit 8th, and mainly it's because of what you said, Scott. I don't. The Yzer plan at this point is just. I mean, you have Dylan Larkin, you have Mason Raymond, Sider, DeBrincat. You have some pieces there, but not beyond them. It's kind of a lot of aging players, and I don't love their back end outside of Sider. And John Gibson's a wild card in goal, so I have them finishing 8th.
Yeah, I like Edvinson on the back end
Sure.
too. Like
Yep.
he's a good young defender, but
Yep.
like I don't know that he's like a stud where it's like, oh, put him right next to Sider, you're all set.
Right. And then so I have Boston 7th, as we mentioned. And 6th, I have Buffalo. 5th, I have Montreal. I have Montreal 5th with 93 points, which is more points than they had last year, but I have them 5th. They could, in my opinion, be as high as 2nd or 3rd in the division, but they were a minus 20 last year as a team in goal differential. I don't think scoring is going to be an issue for them, but keeping the puck out of the net, to me right now, is a question mark. If they can defend nearly as well as I think they're going to be able to score, then raise them even higher. But right now, that's a question to me. So I have Montreal 5th. I have Florida 4th. Now, that's mainly because of the season-ending injury to Alex Barkov and not having Matthew Tkachuk for a couple of months to start the season. I still think that even at 4th, which is the lowest they would finish, in my opinion, I still think they're a wild card team. Then I have Ottawa. I have Tampa Bay, and then I have Toronto. We all know that Toronto's a question mark in the postseason, but they have been a top 10 finish in the NHL in, I want to say, 7 of the last 9 seasons. Yes, 7 of the last 9 seasons, they've been a top 10 team in the NHL in the regular season. And in the 2 seasons that they weren't, they finished 13th and 14th overall. Say what you want about Toronto. They're a regular season team. And, you lose Marner, but I still think that they'll finish first in the division.
Yeah, I have the same bottom 4: Detroit 8, Boston 7, Buffalo 6, Montreal 5, and top 4. I just have a couple spots flipped. So I have Tampa winning the division. I think, and it's a really solid roster. Vasilevsky, I think gives them like just such a high floor and can steal them games throughout the season. I have Toronto 2nd, Florida 3rd, Ottawa 4th. So I think even with the Barkov injury, I still think Florida is staying out of wild card territory.
All right, I'm gonna go from 1 to 8. You guys kind of did it reverse. I'm gonna go 1 to 8. I have Lightning 1st, Toronto 2nd, Panthers. I had originally before the Barkov injury. I would have, and remember, Kachuk's gonna miss a good chunk of the season too before he gets back. They say maybe around Christmas. So he's gonna miss time in the beginning of the year. So I have them 3rd. After, with all things considered, I still think they're a playoff team, and hopefully for them, Kachuk comes back and he looks normal and whatever. I think that still puts them in the top 3 in the Atlantic. And then I have Ottawa 4th, Canadiens 5th, like you, Brian, Bruins 6th. I had Detroit 7th, Buffalo 8th, but I mean, really, it could be those 2 could be flopped. So yeah, that's my Atlantic.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing you guys both had that I didn't was Tampa being first. And to that point, I will also add that Tampa Bay is historically, they're just a top 10 team on both special teams units. And to me, that is a huge reason why they're so consistent. I don't see that changing this year. And I think that whether they finish 2nd, like I said, or 1st, like you guys said, I think that's one main reason why they are going to be a top 3 team in the Atlantic for sure, in my opinion. Again, as with every team, health permitting. The one question I have about Tampa Bay is, can their bottom 6 provide enough secondary scoring to finish as high as you guys are saying? And to be honest, as high as I'm saying as well. I think their bottom 6 is a bit of a question mark for scoring depth. I'm not saying it's bad, but I just think it's a question. And then, yeah, that's what I say about Tampa.
Yeah, I think they have a couple questions on the back end as well. Like they're not a perfect roster by any means, but I do think they're pretty strong overall, and the high end talent at the top just puts them in a really good position. Toronto obviously lost a high-end talent guy in Marner, and I agree with what you said. Like, they still have a lot there. They're still going to win a lot of games in the regular season. I do wonder about like this Joseph Wall situation with him being away from the team. If that's going to linger at all, like then Stolarz becomes the clear number one, which he may very well be capable of handling. But just something he did start to kind of run with that down the stretch last year, but hasn't done it for a full season. So, but yeah, I think with Florida maybe having to grind through the regular season a bit, like it does feel like those are the top two, and could be, depending on how things shake out, he could be battling for the right to not have to face Florida in the first round.
Right. And another knock I'll mention this time on Toronto, who again I have winning the division, but wouldn't be surprised in the least if it's Tampa or hell even Florida, because I know I have them fourth, but it's because of injuries. I mean, they know how to win, right? But you look at Toronto's back end, and to me, one of their biggest issues, and it still presents itself, in my opinion, they don't have a true number one defenseman, in my opinion. Certainly not to the caliber that they need to go where they want to go. I mean, Morgan Riley, according to every list you see, in particular, go to NHL.com's list, he's not even a top 20 defenseman in their ranking. And if you look at NHL fantasy defensemen, top 50 fantasy defensemen, Morgan Riley is 43rd on that list. And he is Toronto's best two-way defenseman. Now, with that said, I think that their D-core overall is a strong unit. I think that Tanev, Riley, Carlo, Ekman Larson, Benoit, and who am I missing?
McCabe.
Brian McCabe.
Jake McCabe.
Jake McCabe. Who's Brian? Oh, Brian. He's the old Leafs defenseman.
Yeah.
Jake McCabe. They're just a really good unit. They all bring a little bit of a different element, but they're lacking that true horse. And unless Morgan Riley can become something that he hasn't been for quite some time, that's going to be a question for them, certainly in the postseason. But regular season, I think they're a lock to be a top three team in the Atlantic, obviously. So that's that. Scott, what do you want to do with next?
Just go in order.
Yeah, I want to do a couple of these individual ones that you have.
Sure. All right. David Pastrnak. He's had 3 consecutive 100-point seasons. Over under 100 points for David Pastrnak for a 4th consecutive year. Bridget and Scott.
Me first.
Yeah.
Yes. I think, like you said, 100 points, more than 100 points each of the last 3 seasons. I think I've been really impressed with what I've seen from Geeky so far, and I'm counting on the chemistry from last year's Geeky, Elias Lindholm, Pastrnak line to be there to start the season, and the fact that they had a good training camp and it was intense. And I think Geeky's, like I said, Geeky's coming in healthy and looking like he's going to be a goal scorer for this team again. I think he will surpass 100 once again, and hopefully that line as a whole has more production from the other two as well this season.
Yeah, I say over as well. I don't see any reason that he wouldn't be able to get there again, other than injury, but like you can't predict that. So, yeah, I mean, he's more comfortable with his line mates than he was at this point last year. I know he had the knee tendonitis to start camp, but seems to be well over that. He's skating fine. He's looked good when he's played. So that'll should put him in a better spot. Last year he was coming off a couple different things that he had dealt with at World Championships. So, and then got off to a really slow start last year and still went over 100. So I don't expect another slow start. So, maybe he doesn't finish the season as strong, where he's like right there with Draisaitl and Kucherov the second half of the year, but he could be like that. That's the category he's in. So those guys in today's NHL, they put up 100 points, and I expect David Pastrnak to put up 100 points.
I do too. He's an offensive superstar, and it doesn't matter who is around him. He has 100+ points on a record-breaking team. He has 100+ points on a team that's a bottom 5 team in the league. It doesn't matter. His line mates, it doesn't matter. He's that damn good, and he'll be a 100-point scorer again. All right. Jeremy Swayman, over under 900 save percentage.
It better be over. I think the Bruins
last year was what? It was what last year, Scott? It was like an 893 last year or something like that.
892, yeah.
So
if it's under 900 again, then the Bruins and Jeremy Swayman are both dealing with a lot of uncomfortable questions.
Yeah, I said yes. So, and I base my answer off a few things. First of all, like previously in his career, he was always above that. This was his first season under 900. Even when you factor in his 892 save percentage last year, he's still above 900. He's 910 career in the NHL. And I do think that not missing training camp will account for some extra boost in his statistics and hopefully in wins as well for the team. So I think that more than likely he is above 900. I don't know if I would say he's above 910, but which would be above his career average. But yeah, I'm comfortable saying he'll be above 900.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. I don't think it's going to be a Vezina season for him, but I mean, it could, but I'm not projecting that. I do think though that you better be above 900 at the contract that he signed, and they're going to need him to be. So I expect some tighter defense with Marco Sturm. I expect tighter defense with McAvoy and Lindholm there all year, hopefully. And I don't think it's crazy to say that he should be above 900.
I don't. He should be better than average, and I would go so far as to say, like, I think it's fair to expect him to be a top 10 goalie in the NHL. He's the 4th highest paid, so like, yeah, I don't know if he's in the Vezina Trophy voting or top 5. I mean, there's a lot of good goalies in the league, but he should be a top 10 goalie. Like, that's what he's getting paid to be. That's what he was trending towards before last season. If you look at his numbers, obviously in a smaller platoon role, but like that's where he was, whether it was regular stats like save percentage and goals against, or advanced stuff like goals saved above expected. That's what he was trending towards. So to me, that's if he rebounds to being a league average goalie this year, like that's still not good enough for me. Like he should be a top 10 goalie in the NHL.
If he is a top 10 goalie in the NHL, that changes all of our predictions probably for the standings, like we just went through to start our prediction episode, right? Like if he's good enough to be top 10, that's probably good enough to add more points than any of the three of us had the Bruins finishing with.
I don't know if it drastically changes my prediction if he is.
Really?
Just because like my big concern is the offense, and it's such a huge question mark really beyond that first line that I could see Swayman being really good and the defense being better than last year and them still finishing well out of the playoffs.
All right, guys. Who's going to be Boston's second leading scorer?
Easy. I don't even think there's a question. I assume this will be unanimous. This is going to be Morgan Geekie again.
Yeah, that's my answer as well. I guess I could listen to an argument for Elias Lindholm, but I don't see it. I think Geekie's the better offensive player at this point. I think he gets into more scoring positions. I guess if you just wanted to go on like sheer point total and wanted to go predict a Charlie McAvoy career year, but I don't know that I see that. Like I think Morgan Geekie's going to top 60 points again, and that's probably going to be good enough to be the second leading scorer.
Yeah, I mean, I thought we were talking about goal scoring, but I didn't.
I took it as points, but yeah, I mean,
okay.
Either way, my answer is Morgan Geekie.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I guess me too. But certainly for goals, I think that's he had 16 more goals than Elias Lindholm last year. And now Lindholm, I think, will have a better year, but I also think Geekie is going to have better stats than he did last year. So I think it's an easy, for sure, second most goals. I'm pretty positive it's Morgan Geekie. And then probably Elias Lindholm third. But yeah, I think it's kind of obvious.
Just a quick correction, Scott. I think it would be his first time hitting 60 points.
Yeah, he's got
last year he was 57. Did I say
no,
he had 60? I know. I think he has 60 this year. I might have said he had it 60.
I thought you may have said top 60 again, but maybe I misheard you. But in any event, he's right around there. So I will say this: goal scoring wise, I'm with you. I think he should be the second leading goal scorer. But overall point total, I agree. It's Morgan Geekie, but I wouldn't say it's super obvious. And let me just give a quick reason why. He had a 22% shooting percentage last year, up from 13 the year before. I expect it to be higher than 13, but I don't know if it's going to be 22 again. It'll probably be less. And so he's going to have an uptick in his assist total. I think his goals are probably going to dip a little bit. I know we had a slow start. He had 5 points through the first 20 games of his season last year. So if he can have a better start, and he's with Pastrnak from day one, special teams and even strength, he should have a better start. But so yes, I think he's going to lead the team. He's going to be the second leading goal scorer, and I think the second leading point scorer. But I think if Elias Lindholm has a better year, it could be a little bit closer than obvious. But I'm with you guys overall. I think Geekie is the answer to both those questions.
Yeah, and I would also point out that you have two guys on your second line who 2 years ago, not last season, but 2 years ago, were also knocking on the door of 60 points in Pavel Zacha and Casey Middlestad. So if one or both of them, and it would probably be both of them because they're line mates, at least to start the season. But if those guys really bounce back and get on track, like it could be one of them. Again, I'm not predicting that. I think being one of the guys who plays with Pastrnak gives you a massive leg up when we're talking about who's going to be the second leading scorer on the team. But Middlestad and Zacha have both been right in that points wise. Have been right in that neighborhood that Geekie was in last year. And to my point about McAvoy, like he's top 50 points twice before. So that's not completely out of the realm of possibility for him either.
All right, who is going to be Boston's X-factor?
I had Hampus Lindholm, particularly because I think they missed him a lot last season, not just for his defense, but for his production, for what he can help on the power play. He only played 17 games last year, so infusing him kind of automatically gives you a step up. I'm high on Hampus Lindholm, maybe higher than other people are, because for some reason I see some Lindholm hate out there. I've always thought he was a great defenseman. I've always thought he was steady on the back end and also like his vision. So I say him coming back makes a difference. And remember, 2 seasons ago, he had 53 points. And then last year, obviously in 17 games, you can't really compare, but I say he has a 40-point season and he's your X factor.
My X factor is Casey Middlestad because he's the guy I find myself thinking about the most this preseason, where I'm like thinking about like the ceiling and the floor for this team, where like the ceiling is they make the playoffs and the floor is they're one of the very worst teams in the league. And I'm like, you know what? If you could tell me that Casey Middlestad, it gets back to being the guy he was before the trade to Colorado, where he was at 24 years old, trending towards being a bona fide number 2 center, and you tell me he's on track for 60 points, then I'm like, you know what? I probably feel pretty good about the Bruins, like exceeding expectations and being in the hunt. If you tell me he's what he was last year, first in Colorado and then here where he was, again, we know like he didn't have NHL line mates. He was on a line with Vinny Lettieri and Cole Koepke, but I mean, he was pretty much a zero after the trade here. Like he was invisible. He did nothing. If you're getting anything approaching that Casey Middlestad, then I'm like, yeah, probably not going to be a good year at all. And you're going to be looking to sell, and you're going to be looking to move on from Casey Middlestad and deciding he is not part of your future here.
Both good answers. Both are answers that I would say if it wasn't for the one I'm gonna say, and that is Marat Husn. I mean, sorry.
Okay.
That's my 7th player prediction. No, I'm gonna go Jeremy Swayman for all the reasons we said earlier. I just think that, and honestly, yes for this year, but long term as well. I mean, if he isn't the goalie we all thought he was, then to Scott's point earlier, there's going to be some conversations that have to be had, and I hope that that's not the case. So, Jeremy Swayman bouncing back to me is their biggest X factor. Casey Middlestat can have a big year, so can Lindholm. But if you're getting that, the Swayman we saw last year, it's all for naught. But your answers, I would have said those had not been for Swayman. So moving along.
So I guess, can I ask a follow-up question to you, Scott, about Middlestat and your choice?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he's more likely to be on the upper end? Like, was your prediction that he's going to bounce back, or are you just saying he's the X factor because if he's bad, then they are screwed, and if he's good, then that changes their?
Yeah, I just think he's the player that has like the widest variance for me, where I'm like, I like Hampus Lindholm too, and I think he's going to be rock solid. So, like, to me, like, I'm kind of already accounting for that. I think Jeremy Swayman's going to bounce back, but definitely there's an X factor to that where, like, I also wouldn't be completely shocked if he doesn't.
I took X factor to mean I'm starting to realize we interpreted some of these differently.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine.
You mean positively, like in a
positive no, I think an X factor can go either way.
Yeah,
be a negative X factor.
Yeah, I interpret X factor as they like. I would say X factor is the player that is most uncertain, but whichever way they go can affect it. Like, for example, David Pastrnak, we expect him to be David Pastrnak, right? So who's a player that they're a seesaw that can go one way or the other, and depending on how they go is how the Bruins could go.
Yeah, I took it as like what's something that could happen different like this year, like one player's contributions that could be different, and that so that's why I chose Hampus.
Yeah,
and
I think that's also like a completely fair use of X factor. Like, but yeah, I mean, as far as my prediction on Casey Middlestad, I am not expecting a full bounce back. I'm pretty down on the second line in general. Quite frankly, I don't think it's going to work, and I think that's going to be part of this team's biggest problem. I think it's going to be a big reason why they don't score enough, and why I ultimately have them comfortably out of the playoffs.
You can make the argument the only top 6 forward in that group right now is Zacha, right? I mean, like, Middlestat has potential to be a top 6 forward, and Victor Arvidsson has been in his career. But if we're talking right now, based on some recent seasons, I mean, Middlestat has to prove he can be it again, and Arvidsson has to prove that Father Time hasn't caught up to him just yet. So even the Bruins second line, it's like, are you a second line or are you a glorified third line? And so again, it depends on which spectrum they fall in. They have the potential, but they also have the potential to not be a true second line.
Yeah, and they're even more important out of the gate here. So, like, thinking specifically about Wednesday night, this first week of games, first couple weeks of the season, the Bruins' bottom 6, as configured right now, is tilted towards defense and physicality. There is not a lot of offensive dynamism in that bottom 6. Maybe somewhere down the line this season, there is maybe a Matt Patra or a Mate Blumel get a recall, and that changes the dynamic of your third line. But for right now, as we kind of jokingly but kind of seriously said in the last podcast, you have 2 fourth lines, really. And they have similar identities, and I don't think either one of them is going to score a whole lot. That would be a great early pleasant surprise if one of them does. But because of that, you're going to need that second line to score. they have you cannot win consistently in the NHL with one line. So that second line has to score, and they have to not give it back at the other end, which is another big question because Casey Middlestat has struggled defensively before, and he's now going to be a second line center that you can maybe shelter to an extent, give that line a lot of offensive zone draws, but they're still going to be going against teams' second line, second pairings, good players that you're also going to have to defend against.
All right, let's move along to which Bruin will exceed expectations. Scott, do you have an answer for this one?
Yeah, hold on. Let me quickly check my notes. I think Pavel Zacha. I don't know exactly what expectations are for him, but he's the one part of that second line that I do like. Just because I think he can move around. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up at center and Middlestat gets bumped down the lineup at some point. But 47 points last year. I think he can be back above 50. So he's a guy that I think, again, I don't think he's going to be great. I'm not predicting 60 plus points or, career high or anything like that, but I think he can be better than he was last year.
All right. I had a hard time with this one. For some reason, I kept coming back to this player though. And I don't think it's going to be for point production. This is completely different. So I had Tanner Jeannot, and I say that because he's not going to light the world on fire with scoring, but he's going to be important in other ways. And I kind of imagining it like a Nick Foligno, kind of settling down the bottom six, being a steady presence, being physical, doing the right things in the right moments. And so for some reason, I kept coming back to him as a tone setter, not as a crazy production. Now, and I do think he can produce more than he did last year, because we talked about it on previous podcasts that his numbers have been down. So I think that in that way too, he can exceed his numbers from last year. My answer for what I hope happens, and what would be probably best for the Bruins, is that Fraser Minten exceeds expectations, because that means that you have the next wave of Bruins coming up, and he's one of them, and then you have Higgins after him, and you kind of now have this picture of being off to a good start with the next wave of who might be coming in and taking over. So if Fraser Minten can get some offense going and not just be, steady 200-foot guy that doesn't score too much, and he actually finds the back of the net, I think that would be probably best case scenario for someone exceeding expectations for them.
Yeah, I mean, truly with Minten, I don't even know what the expectations are. So it's tough for me to even offensively.
To me, the expectations are for him to be developing an offensive game, but not be there right away. It could be a slow going development, but if he can do a majority of the season, if he can reach that early in the season and score more than I think people expect, I think that.
But that's kind of what I'm saying though, is what's the line on what's the point total line that we set for Fraser Minten in this first full season? I'll tell you where. No, I know, bro. I'm more so thinking aloud, Bridget. Because I'm writing for tomorrow all my individual point predictions for each player, and Minten, I have him around I have him in the mid to late 20s in points. I'm still undecided on him, but if in a third line center role, you need him to be approaching 30 points, whether he's ready to do so or not. And if he's not, then it's going to change along the way. But I think for me, it's I don't know if that's fair to set on him, but because he doesn't have a full NHL sample size. But that's a good one. Tanner Jeannot was one I was going to mention as well, Bridget. People are down on him, so he's a good answer because people have low expectations for him. But if he can give you 10 and 10, then that's obviously exceeding most people's expectations for him, and it's something he hasn't done in a couple of years. My answer is Elias Lindholm. 47 points last year. I know that the top line is one that people are least worried about, but if he can give you 55 to 60 points, I don't know if a lot of Bruins fans are expecting him to do that despite the contract. Everybody talks about how bad he was last year offensively. He still crept up on 50 points. So can he get you 55 to 60 in a good season? That's my answer.
You know who else I'll throw out who I think is going to exceed the expectations of at least a portion of the fan base who seem to be pretty down on him, and that's Charlie McAvoy, who I think is going to have a very good season. I think the drive and like the intensity played with the Four Nations, I think he's going to feel that again in an Olympic year. And it's not going to carry over to every single Bruins games. He himself has talked about how he probably can't be throwing big hits every game, which I actually think is reasonable. But I think he's going to play well. I think you're going to see him locked in defensively. I think you'll see the shutdown defender who was there the vast majority of his career, but had kind of slipped a little the last year and a half, 2 years. I think that's going to be back. And I think working with Steve Spott, I don't think Charlie McAvoy is ever going to be an elite power play quarterback, but I think working with Steve Spott is going to be good for him. And I think he'll put up some points on the power play. So I could see him back in that 50 to 55 point neighborhood. And playing at a level that probably isn't going to get him into like top 5 in Norris voting, but maybe he's back in the top 10. I could definitely see that.
So this next question, Scott and I will, we'll put our minds together here. I have a name, Scott. Do you want me to go first for a player that might not meet expectations?
Sure.
All right. So I'm going to go Victor Arvidsson. And I think this is more so perhaps internal expectations within the Bruins because, we talked about how there are some young players in training camp that might be, vying for Victor Arvidsson's spot in the second line. Well, those guys didn't even make the team. So it is undoubtedly right now Victor Arvidsson's job to lose. And I think that in that role of a second line winger, I just think the job description, you have to be around 40 points, right? You have to be nearing 40 points at least,
yeah.
right? Like that's the low side. And I'm not saying Bruins fans are out here expecting him to put up 40 points, but I think internally the Bruins need him to be at least a 40-point guy. And I just have my questions that he can be even close to that. Like I think 30 might be, difficult for him. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. So he's my answer. I'm hoping he plays well, but I'm skeptical.
Yeah, I mean, he had 15 goals last year, even in a bad year in Edmonton. I think like 20 is the absolute bare minimum from him. And really, you probably need it more like in the mid-20s. And I'm with you. Like, I don't know if he still has that. We're gonna have to see it. My answer for Bruin who will not fall short of expectations, I worry it's going to be Mason Lohrei. I still don't know if like the defensive commitment is just there, and I think Marco Sturm is really trying to drill it in. And if anyone's going to get through, then I do think it's going to be Sturm and the staff. Like, I think they're on him. Sturm's even been open publicly talking about, they have to fix parts of Lohrei's game, and like he's going to keep working with them and he's going to make them defend hard. And that's good to hear. It's something that I'm like, again, I think I'm going to have to see it to believe it, like see it over a good stretch. I worry that this year might look, maybe not the minus 43 part, but might look kind of the same as last year, where there's offensive production and he looks good there, and you love watching him in the offensive zone. But you just have to like consistently worry about him in his own zone. I could see him not sticking next to McAvoy longer term, which is where he's going to start the season. And I could see you at the end of the season wondering what his future is. Because at that point he'll be halfway through a bridge deal. So I hope I'm wrong, because I like Mason Lohrei and I like watching him play when he has the puck. But I really feel like I need to see it, and I don't know that I have yet.
All right,
And
let me.
I don't really like to do this one, so I'm gonna abstain. So
Boo.
I just think it in my mind and how I operate at my other jobs, like I just think to me, I don't want to be unfair and like be like, oh, this person's gonna suck this year. Like to me, there's something that just doesn't feel right about it to me. From just
You're in the
I work like for my other job, like I work for the league and I work for the
yeah, but not
team
this
and,
one.
like,
You
yeah,
don't work for the Bruins.
but we're also around the team. Like we interact with
They're
the team.
not listening to the podcast, Bridget.
I know, but in my mind, I just feel like being like bad doing it. I don't know. So
I'm gonna tell Pasta you said he's gonna suck this year.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. So I'm gonna give you guys an impromptu question before these next couple. What would surprise you more? The Bruins finishing dead last in the NHL, 32 out of 32, or the Bruins making the playoffs as a wild card team?
Dead last would surprise me more.
Yeah, because there's some really bad teams.
Yeah.
So I just
I'm
think
with you guys.
like, if you're
I
trying
agree.
to tank for McKenna, you're gonna have to really, yeah.
I agree with you guys, but
Get past
whenever
San Jose.
I agree with you guys, but whenever Bruins fan, most Bruins analysts, most national analysts, and advanced standings projection models have the Bruins as a bottom 5 team, it's a fair question to ask in the preseason, or heading into the season, right? I'm
Well,
with
like,
you guys though, but
But like Chicago is Chicago.
yeah,
The Penguins are gonna be bad again. There's a few teams I think are
Yeah, San Jose might be a little better, but like that's still not a good team.
yeah.
yep. All right, so with that said,
You
Bridget
know
and
who's
Scott,
sneaky sneaky just because like we don't really follow them much, but I think the Seattle Kraken are gonna suck this year. I don't know what that franchise is doing. Like that's a team that feels like pretty lost to me.
yeah, I mean, like expansion drafts can be like that, though, right? I mean,
But
for
like they were
expansion teams,
good. Like they made the playoffs.
it could have been fool's luck out of the gate, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
Vegas had it, but Vegas obviously kept it going. But they had to make a lot of bold moves along the way to keep it going. I think it is tough for an expansion team. It's you're getting a lot of the unwanteds around the league, and it can be tough. But I'm with you. I mean, yeah, they're not going to be great either. But all right, so Bridget and Scott, the Bruins will make the playoffs if.
I'll go. So the Bruins will make the playoffs if, and I think it needs to be all three of these things. Not just one. It's not an or, it's an and. Swayman bounces back and looks more like he did when he was in a rotation with Allmark. The defense, and like not just talking about the defensemen, but the overall defense, team defense, and what Sturm is trying to coach them to do. Keeps the goals against down. So like Swayman and them keeping the goals against down, and keeping them in games, even though their scoring isn't expected to be super high. So that and scoring depth has to be better than expected. So, and in particular, the second line needs to be able to score. That is going to be key. We talked about the bottom 6 being much less certain in terms of scoring and being more of an identity situation. But I think Swayman being better, team defense being what it's supposed to be under Sturm, which is being billed as under Sturm, and scoring depth being better than expected, all need to happen for them to make the playoffs.
Yeah, you're right on all 3 counts. I limited myself to one, and kind of the overarching thing that I think is most important, and that is they get legitimate secondary scoring. Like 4 to 6 forwards step up and give them legit middle 6 production. I am very skeptical that happens, but if we're talking about them making the playoffs, I don't see how they do it without that happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think of a couple of things. I think of Swayman being a top 10 goalie. I think of them having to break even more or less at even strength, and then they have to be at worst middle of the pack in both special teams units. I mean, I think if those things happen, and Scott, that kind of goes hand in hand with yours too. Like, secondary scoring would probably happen in that situation too. But yeah, though, if those things happen, then you have a shot. You have a shot at a wild card spot. And we'll dovetail that into our next question, which is probably more obvious than the one we just answered, which is the Bruins will miss the playoffs if, and that is just if they can't score enough, in my opinion. Which that's obviously the biggest question. So
Yeah,
unless you guys have a different one.
Yeah, that's it. And it's because the problem is, like, if you don't score enough, and we're talking about, they might have a lot of 2-1 games, and it's like, if you start losing a lot of 2-1 games, it can just get demoralizing, and then the defensive effort starts to slip, and guys just kind of start to lose hold of the rope. Like, you need the offense to be there to win some of these low scoring games, for Middlestat to set up Arvidsson for a big goal, for Fraser Minton to score a bit. Like, it doesn't have to be every night, but like, you need moments from those guys. And if you start going through like a long stretch where it's not happening, and you're constantly trailing 2-1, and the other team keeps the top line to just one goal, and no one else steps up, like, it just gets demoralizing, and it's just hard to win as a defensive team. Requires quite frankly, it requires more effort than winning when you have a bunch of elite offensive talent and you can outscore your problems. Because that way you can win playing sloppy hockey in the regular season. When you're the team that has to win in defense and goaltending, you can't be sloppy. But if the offense is never there to pick you up, then you're bound to start being sloppy. You're bound to just start making more mistakes. And that's how the season goes sideways quickly, I think, as if it's not there to start and it just doesn't come.
I agree, Scott. And I think something else the Bruins are relying too heavily on is hoping that by putting players in positions that they haven't been in the past, and that will lead to more offense. For example, like, you bring in Morgan Geekie a couple of years ago, who was, playing a lot of fourth line minutes in Seattle and whatnot. You give him an elevated role in Boston, all of a sudden he takes off. And it's like, okay, that happens once in a while with the right guy, but that's not something that's going to happen with 6 of your new forwards. Like, you're not going to, I don't think putting Mikey Eyssimont in a third line role is going to make him a 35-point scorer. I mean, hey, be great if it does, right? Or putting Tanner Jeannot in a third line role, or Fraser Minton, or any of these guys that haven't either scored at the NHL level or done it consistently enough. Elevated minutes doesn't always equate to higher production. They're hoping it does, but that's something else that they're kind of relying too much on, in my opinion, as well.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just add, you can't be in 2-1 games if your goalie gives up more than 2 goals. So, or you know what I mean? So then you're talking about really losing confidence.
All right. This one's, I'm interested to see what you guys have for this answer, which is one bold prediction for the Bruins this season.
Okay. Can I go first?
Sure. This
is not going to be like a super positive bold prediction like I did last year. So my bold prediction is that one or more of the guys on your opening night second line, which is Zacha, Middlestat, Arvidsson, get traded at the trade deadline. So I think any of these guys, in particular, I think Zacha and Arvidsson could be targets for other teams if they're in win now and the Bruins are out of it. And I think that Sweeney is certainly trying to build up draft capital, prospect pool, trade for prospects, trade for first round picks. And I don't think he's afraid to get rid of any of those 3 guys if he can get the prospect pool to be better. And if it's obvious they're already out of it, those, I think, multiple maybe of the second liners are gone by the end of the season.
I don't want to pick on you, Bridget, but I actually think the bolder prediction would be that all three are still here at the end of the year. Like, I fully expect at least one of those guys to get traded, and honestly, it might be 2 or 3 of them.
I think it's funny.
I said,
I think it's funny how Bridget's too nice to give a prediction about someone having a bad year, but we'll be like, you three might get your ass shipped out of Boston now.
no, but not because they're playing bad in a vacuum, like not just
situational.
Personal. Like the situation is that I think that they're going to be out of a playoff spot. And when you're out of a playoff spot, you see, like, you're trading your good players that have value, right? So to me, if Zach has a good season, that makes it even more likely. And like, look who left at last year's trade deadline. You trade your captain, you trade Brad Marchand, who goes on to have a great playoffs. You trade Brendan Carlo. Like these are good players. These are players that had value to other teams that are going to get you the draft picks and the prospects that you want. So, yeah, I think that actually is kind of a vote of confidence maybe to them a little bit, not because you want to get rid of them, but because you see that in the short term, you can't use them and you are looking more towards the future of trying to bolster, for the future.
Okay, so last year, my bold prediction was that Jeremy Swayman was going to win the Vezina Trophy. You would think I would have learned.
Double down. Do not double down.
You would think I would have learned not to predict a Bruin to win an award.
No, okay, so it's not Swayman.
But my bold prediction is that there is going to be a Bruin who wins some end of season hardware. I am predicting that David Pastrnak wins the Rocket Richard Trophy as the NHL's leading goal scorer.
That's not that bold. That's not that bold.
He's making fun of mine.
I think he's 6th in betting odds.
I haven't seen the odds, but I mean, he's won it before, right?
He's won it once before, tied with Alex Ovechkin. But yeah, from December 1st on last year, he tied with Leon Draisaitl for the NHL lead in goals. So,
well, guess what? I think Trent Frederick's going to win the Rocket Richard this year. So.
I mean, he might. He's playing on the line with Draisaitl and McDavid. So, obviously, Leon Draisaitl won it last year. Austin Matthews won it each of the 2 years before that. Those are the two betting favorites, are Draisaitl and Matthews. And obviously, I would not be surprised if it's one of them. But again, like as we mentioned, Pastrnak got off to a slow start last year and still had a great season. And I think there'll be opportunities to score more on the power play because while I don't know if the power play is going to be great, I do think it'll be improved from last year. So I think he's going to be like in my real prediction is like, I think he's going to be in range. And so if I think he's going to be close, then I'll take the extra step and say he wins it.
I hope he does. So again, with this category, it is meant to be bold, not necessarily realistic. So when I say what I'm about to say, just keep that in mind, because I also think that there's going to be a Bruin that's going to walk away with some hardware. Well, I should say, I don't think this is going to happen, but in a bold scenario, this could happen. And that is that first-year head coach Marco Sturm wins the Jack Adams. Now, here's the only reason I say that. The only way that he does so is if the Bruins somehow make the playoffs. If this Bruins team is a playoff team, I think Marco Sturm will have to get some consideration for a Jack Adams. And in this bold world we're living in, I could see people falling in love with a first-year head coaching story. So that's my bold prediction. I think I'm going to give myself a pat on the back for being the only actual bold prediction of the three of ours. Because you're looking at me like I got 10 heads, Bridget, but then again, it was supposed to be bold, so I'm going to stick with my guns.
I was looking at you like that because what, to win that, it takes a lot.
But how bold with it? How bold is it when you preface it with "I don't think this is actually going to happen"? Like I think Pastrnak winning the Rocket Richard could happen.
David Pastrnak,
I think it's very realistic.
Yeah, but that's why it's not bold.
Yeah,
how many other people are thinking him to win the Rocket Richard?
Realistic and bold are opposite.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Obviously, Sturm winning Jack Adams isn't realistic. That's why I'm saying it's bold. I think most listeners would agree with me in this situation. But I don't know.
It is. That's extremely bold.
It's very bold.
Montgomery won it because he had a roster that won the most games in regular season history.
I'll say this: if this Boston Bruins team makes the playoffs, it's gonna have to be because there was a Jack Adams caliber season coached by Marco Stern. There's no other way to describe getting this team to the playoffs outside of an incredible coaching job. So in that world, which we have all said that their ceiling could be a wild card team, in that scenario, I think that Stern would turn some heads and might be in the conversation and potentially win a Jack Adams. That's all.
Yeah, you're right, because like the Jack Adams it's really a coach whose team most exceeds expectations award. Like whether it's a team that was out of the playoffs bounces back to make the playoffs, or a team that was a lower playoff seed is now one of the top teams in the league. Like that's how you get Spencer Carberry last year. Washington went from an 8 seed to a 1 seed, or a good team has a record year like the Jim Montgomery year. Like it's never the coach who like actually just had to like manage multiple difficult situations and ended up with like 97 points and finished third in the division. It's always like it's always the one who, wow, no one expected the team to do that. And it's like it could just be that they got elite goaltending. Like there's been years that it's like the Rick Tocchet year. I've said this before. Like to me, like that trophy should have gone to Thatcher Demko. I'm like, yeah, they just got an incredible goaltending year from Thatcher Demko and exceeded expectations. And everyone's like, Rick Tocchet's a genius. It's like, oh yeah, he told Thatcher Demko to be elite. Like, wow.
Right.
Imagine that.
Coach.
And also, it's to your point, Scott. It's a game of politics. I mean, look at the Florida Panthers. They have no Barkov for the year. Kachuk's out for 2 months. You don't think it's going to be a hell of a coaching job, despite their depth, by Paul Maurice to make the playoffs? I mean, you think anyone's going to give the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champion head coach in the NHL, the Jack Adams, if the Panthers make the playoffs because they have no Barkov or Kachuk for half a year? No. So I'm just saying. I think I'm starting to convince Scott a little bit, actually, as we speak here. So I'll take that as a W.
Yeah, I'm not here with you, Brian, but
I mean, if the Bruins miss the playoffs, it's a very realistic prediction. I just don't think they're going to make the playoffs.
Right. No, I don't either. But that's why I'm saying it's bold. All right, we can move on.
Isn't that it?
Well, that's it for Bruins. We have a couple of league ones if we wanted to just give those real quick, and then we can sign off.
All right, I'm going to have a lot of time.
All right, so we'll start with Bridget. Who is your least favorite Boston Bruin? I mean, no, wait, hold on. Sorry, let me see here. Okay, who will win each division?
Bridget, rank the 5 worst Bruins interviews.
I have a list, but I can't say it. So, all right, I have Panthers. Oh wait, no, I chose the Lightning. Why did I have Panthers here? I have Lightning, Hurricanes, Vegas, Dallas.
Same.
Hurricanes, Lightning, Vegas, Dallas. I have 3 or 4. I have Washington winning the Metro again.
But you also had Toronto.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. So Washington, Toronto, Dallas, and Vegas. The Metro, to me, I just think it's wide open. And Carolina's obviously right up there. New Jersey's good. I think Columbus is going to have a sneaky good year, but I don't see any one of those teams necessarily being any better than Washington heading into the year. So I'm sticking with the Caps there. But with that said, we can go to some playoff predictions, I suppose.
Yeah, so in the East,
we're entering my least favorite part of all of the predictions.
So in the East, I have out of the Atlantic, Tampa, Toronto, Florida, Ottawa. Out of the Metro, I have Carolina, New Jersey, Washington, and the Rangers as the final team in, beating out Montreal, beating out Columbus.
All right, Bridget.
I did not put one in this order. I kind of missed that one and skipped to conference final and Stanley Cup predictions. So we'll just keep Scott's.
All right. Yeah, I have Toronto, Tampa, Ottawa, Florida, and Montreal. I have 5 coming out of the Atlantic again. And then in the Metro, I have Washington. Who did I have? Washington, Carolina, and Columbus. So yeah. Yep.
So no New Jersey, no Rangers.
Listen, the Rangers, and we talked about this like a month ago, but to me, there was a lot of change in that room. We talked about the change in the Bruins room. They had a lot of change too. I don't love particularly their bottom six. They have some proving to do, and their decor has some proving to do. I mean, yeah, I like their high end talent. Again, Zibanejad needs a bounce back year. Lafreniere needs a bounce back year. Shesterkin obviously is great, but there's a lot of questions in New York. So I mean, and I also think that the Islanders have a sneaky good defense core and goaltending. Their forward core is a little iffy, but I love Columbus. I think they're going to be good. They just missed the playoffs last year. I know you mentioned New Jersey, Scott. Jack Hughes has missed 20 games a year the last 3 or 4 years. His health to me could be the difference there, and I'm not sold that he's going to hold up again. So to me, it comes down to health with New Jersey, and I do think Columbus is they got a lot of good pieces there. I do like the Jackets.
Yeah, I think goaltending's a big question mark in Columbus, and I don't know that Zach Werenski can do what he did last year. He was like with the likes of Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes last year, and he'd really never been that defenseman before. And I just wonder, like, if he goes back to just what he's been the rest of his career, which is still a really good defenseman, like, what does that do? Like that, like that's kind of like a big thing that could take a step back. So I do think the Metro rather is wide open. It definitely feels like the weaker of the two divisions. I kind of feel like Carolina could run away with that division. I do like what they did. I still don't think they're a Stanley Cup winner. I still think they ultimately don't get it done in the Eastern Conference Finals, but I like that team. I think Washington could take a little bit of a step back. The concerns I had about them in the regular season really came to fruition in the playoffs, which is I don't think their centers are good enough. But they should still be in the playoffs, I think.
Yeah, I mean, one thing about Columbus, though, and I agree with you on Werenski, I think it's unfair to assume he'll have another year like last year. I do think it could be somewhere in between his historical past and last year. But what I like about Columbus is that I think players like Adam Fantilli, Ken Johnson, I think those guys, they'll take steps forward offensively. I think Marchenko, Voronkov, they got some players that I just think there's some ceilings to get to for them, and I think that they're in the middle of doing that. So I think what you might lose in offensive production from Werenski, I think you'll gain some other forwards that are taking that next step. And I think the Washington center depth is a fair question. Yeah, Carolina, I don't know. How many years we've seen it with them? It's the same old song and dance. I know they got Ehlers.
But they always put up the 100 to 105 points.
Well, I have them in the playoffs. I just don't know if I also like a full year of Ryan Leonard in Washington. I do like the Capitals defense core. And I think, the possibility of Ovechkin potentially being his last year, you might have some extra motivation and just a little extra mojo for that team again to try to get it done for him. So, all right, should we just do conference finals and cup, or how do you want to do this, Scott? Just
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I can quickly race through my West. Like, we don't even have to dive into it, but I had 1 second out of the Central. I only have 3 teams in the Pacific making it: Vegas, Edmonton, LA. Out of the Central, I have Dallas, Winnipeg, Colorado, Minnesota, and the Utah Mammoth making the playoffs for the first time.
I like that. All right. I have Dallas in the finals. I have Dallas, and I got to think of who my Eastern Conference team is. Maybe Tampa. I can see Tampa. Dallas versus Tampa, and I think Dallas wins it.
I have so conference final. I had Florida against no, wait, what am I saying? No, Tampa. Why do I keep doing this? Tampa against the Hurricanes, Dallas, Vegas, and then final Tampa against Dallas, and then I I guess, I mean, Dallas is a more complete roster, so maybe I'm with you, Brian. I think they probably are more complete there, but Vasilevsky's a really good goalie, and yeah.
So on our very first episode after the Panthers repeated this spring, I said I was putting it on the record then that I was picking them to win the Stanley Cup again, to three-peat. I was doing it then so I wasn't dumb enough to talk myself into something else over the summer.
Yeah, Barkov.
The gods are testing me with the Barkov injury. They want me to be dumb enough to go back on my word, and I'm not going to do it. I'm sticking with my pick. Florida Panthers three-peat, and I have them beating Vegas in the final.
Yeah, I mean, I think Vegas, Colorado, Edmonton, Dallas. I think those four all have a legit chance to make the Cup Final out of the West. I think Vegas is going to be great. I have them winning the Pacific, but ultimately, you look at Dallas's depth up front and on the back end. And I mean, hell, they even have Ottinger in goal. I think Dallas is the most complete team in the Western Conference, and Vegas loses Alex Pietrangelo for the full season in playoffs. I mean, that kind of hurts their depth as well in defense with their being a number one defenseman. Florida, Scott, all things considered equal, I would have picked them a three-peat again as well.
If they had Barkov, I would 100%. They signed all the guys they wanted to re-sign. Like they were able to pull off what people thought was impossible and get their major UFAs re-signed. So.
Right. But the Barkov injury, I mean, how many times we talked about it's tough to win a cup without a true number one center. I'm not sold that, Sam Bennett or Anton Lundell is that, obviously. Certainly not to Barkov's capability. So if any team can do it without a number one center in the lineup, it's Florida. But I guess time will tell. They're still extremely deep, especially when Kachuk back.
And it's not impossible that Barkov returns at some point in the playoffs. Obviously, there would be questions about how effective he is, but May is kind of in the timeline of when he could return. The problem, of course, is this isn't the days where you might get an easy matchup in the first round. They could very well have the Battle of Florida in the first round, and Tampa is going to be a really good team this year, I think. So, it's possible their toughest series or one of their two toughest could be that first round matchup. So if they don't have Barkov by then, it could hurt. I said I was done betting against the Panthers, and even with the Barkov injury, I'm not going to bet against them.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode, I believe. Any final thoughts from you guys? I know Bridget has to go. Scott, I think you're probably good too, right?
I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for listening, and we'll talk to you after the first 2 games of the Bruins season. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.